Welcome to Avenue M. My name is Joey Taylor.
And I'm Haroon Mogul.
We're two men on a journey of faith and meaning. In each episode, we unpack the moments that shape us, the struggles that build us, and the questions that intrigue us. What do you do when someone you've spent years criticizing suddenly starts saying things you believe are true? That's the strange place Tucker Carlson occupies for us. In this conversation, we wrestle with the difference between agreeing with someone's conclusions and trusting the kind of world they're helping to create. Asking whether it's possible to welcome a shared conviction without embracing the outrage, conspiracies, and polarization that may come packaged with it. Along the way, we explore the idea of the conflict entrepreneur, someone whose influence depends on keeping us divided, and ask a deeper question that extends far beyond Tucker Carlson himself. Who are we becoming through the voices we choose to listen to? In an age of algorithms, unlikely alliances, and collapsing political categories, this conversation is ultimately less about Tucker Carlson than about the moral challenge of navigating agreement without losing ourselves. So I don't know the guy's name, but the ancient Greek dude who was a really good orator.
Matt Damon?
No, I don't think that was I don't know his name. So evidently he became a good speaker by putting rocks in his mouth and speaking very loudly over the top of the crashing of the waves. Like that was his training methodology.
That was his trick. So
yeah.
There have to be easier ways to become a better speaker than that.
Yes, exactly. Well, also, I feel like it's like it develops a certain skill set, but it actually doesn't help you with, critical thinking or,
Your argumentation doesn't become better, just your projection.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is a case for why microphones are a good thing.
Exactly.
Technology more broadly.
It's a pre-amplification training methodology.
This is going to be my next sermon because every mosque has a mihrab, a niche, which is designed to project the imam's voice, which is a lot easier than the imam putting rocks in his mouth and then praying next to the ocean.
Yes.
While screaming out Quran in the hopes that the congregation hears him.
Also, there is the question of who determines that you actually pass the test. Like, is it the fish? Is it the dolphins? Is somebody standing next to you? Anyways.
Also, can I point out that if that individual was my nemesis, I would have made up a story like that to fundamentally discredit him.
Oh, okay.
Can we trust anything Matt Damon says, given that he puts rocks in his mouth?
Exactly.
Yeah,
It sounds ridiculous.
So I'm very excited because we have 5 very cool episodes coming up. We have one on Matt Damon, the Odyssey, and the Honda Odyssey. We have one on whether or not we should dunk on conservatives / liberals / whoever our opponents are. We have one on Roust Out, that decline and decadence. That one, I want to talk about DEI with you. I think that'd be very important. Then we have one on conspiracy theories, but today we have Tucker Carlson, not as a guest, but as a topic.
Nice.
Should I have said he would be a guest so that more people would continue listening?
It definitely would have been an effective promotion method.
It might have been, but I wanna pause, Joey, and I want to say that given Sunday's result at the World Cup, I think we can definitively conclude that God does care who wins.
Okay, tell me why. Because
Spain won.
Okay. As opposed to Argentina, you mean?
Yes, I prayed. Many Muslims prayed for Spain to win, and then they won.
Were Muslims praying for Morocco to win?
Yes, but then God told us it would be better for Spain to win, and so we said, okay, we're going to pivot accordingly. So basically what it was a lesson, Joey. See, I want you to understand. Mm-hmm. We didn't want Argentina to win.
Sure.
Most of us, at least. I know one Muslim out of the 2 billion Muslims I know who is rooting for Argentina. And everyone we prayed for was defeated. And we simply took the lesson and moved on until we arrived at Spain, at which point we were like, this one feels right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then they won.
Okay.
So the conclusion is prayer works, but not before God has to teach you some lessons.
You got to be flexible in your prayers, though.
Yeah, like how to stick to a game plan.
Uh-huh.
Right? Don't panic at the first sign of trouble.
Sure.
That's what, and that's actually a perfect opening to Tucker Carlson.
Okay, how?
Okay, so first of all, I'm assuming that people know who Tucker Carlson is. If you don't know who he is, he's one of the most influential conservative pundits in the United States. He was a prominent voice on Fox News. He left Fox News. He was a major supporter of Donald Trump. And I don't know if it's too far to say, but a friend of Donald Trump, although at times also an enemy of Donald Trump. They had an on-again, off-again relationship, but they've been diverging from each other. And then the big break was, I think, the Iran war. And for Tucker Carlson, that was bombing a bridge too far, as it were. And he's now recently announced that he would like to be involved in starting a third party. Tucker Carlson believes he's actually America first, which means, for example, no new wars. But the reason I wanted to talk about him is because he has become increasingly prominent in Muslim spaces and Muslim conversations. And I want to unpack that because it concerns me, it intrigues me, and it does suggest to me that one should not panic at the first sign of trouble. But that's a bigger story. But do you think that's a fair evaluation of Tucker Carlson? Like, what do you think? What am I missing?
I think that's fair. I would say that even before Iran, he was starting to say things that were pro-Palestine, critical of the state of Israel. He was already starting to sort of recant on some of his positions about quote unquote radical Islam in the past. And so he sort of made his way all the way back around to appreciating Islam and Muslims and that kind of stuff.
Yes, even as he is very Christian. Maybe not the kind of Christian every Christian agrees with, but for him, Christianity is important. Is that fair?
Oh yeah, I think it's a huge part of his public persona.
Yes, but you looked a little skeptical when I said he was very Christian. And even as I was saying it, I knew that wasn't the right way to say it, but I didn't know a better way to say it.
We keep circling around this kind of question, what makes an authentic Christian or authentic religious person?
Joey decides.
I would just say, from a Christian perspective, there are things called fruits of the Spirit that I feel like maybe Tucker Carlson struggles with exhibiting from time to time.
How do you mean?
Okay, so I think the way I'm entering into this conversation is on a couple of levels. I would say, first off, it seems like to me that Tucker Carlson is sort of the classic conflict entrepreneur, meaning that he has made his money, he's found prestige, he's found power off of engendering outrage and polarization. It's incredibly difficult for me to hear any argument then that Tucker Carlson has been bad for the fabric of our country. So I think that's sort of where I begin. Then moving on from there, it's interesting because he is in this sort of Christian space. I've been in these spaces for a long time. And I remember when I first went to the West Bank and came back and started talking to the context that I found myself in at that stage in my life, people kind of thought I was crazy, what are you talking about, Palestinian rights, and there's Palestinian Christians, and there's blah, blah, all this kind of stuff, right? And so Tucker has found a way to break through to this crowd particularly in a way that I've never seen before in the history of this conflict and in my life. And so I both think that he continues to be incredibly problematic for a number of reasons. I mean, talk about election denying January 6th, his position on immigration, his adoption of conspiracy theories left or on and on and on. And also, he has found a way to speak to something that I care really deeply about, to people who I care very deeply for. That's my tension point right now.
Tucker Carlson agrees with us on some big things. And that's weird. It is weird.
It's not just that he agrees with us. It's like he agrees with us. And I wonder if the reason why he agrees with us is because he sees this as fitting really nicely into a business model that continues to cause outrage and fear and sensationalism. That's what I suspect is the reason why he's all of a sudden become very pro-Palestine and suspicious of our president.
So can I be really generous towards Tucker Carlson?
Sure. It's up to you.
So
man.
it's our podcast, so I guess we have to agree to agree. His affect is very restrained.
Yeah.
He does say strong things. He does often launch projectiles intellectually, politically, conceptually, but he does it in a way where he does not seem like a merchant of outrage. He seems like someone who's really thinking through out loud with you some really hard questions.
Yeah.
And he very much gives off the impression of a man who would like to take you by the hands into a conclusion that might surprise you, even shock you, often contradict you. But because there's such geniality in the approach, the impression a listener or a viewer receives is of someone who does care about them, or at least cares about the conclusion he's coming to.
Well, I mean, I think Tucker is an incredibly gifted communicator. And he has this affect that's sort of like, oh gosh, I'm like just the normal everyday guy who
Yeah.
just, I don't really have that much impact on the world. I mean, I'm just sort of thinking things through with you. So I think that's his brand now. I would say like Tucker and the Fox News version of Tucker
Sure.
was much different. But yeah, but I think he's totally absorbed that role now. Sort of a common everyday guy trying to think through difficult stuff. And sure, he comes from a particular perspective, but he's really open to any perspective.
He sounds like a white uncle to me.
Well, I don't.
Do you know? So in South Asian culture, an uncle, and this is very paradoxical. Mamdani, people tried to get Mamdani in trouble for this because they didn't understand what he was saying when he referenced aunties and uncles. So in South Asian culture, an auntie or an uncle is an elder who is close to you but is not related to you. So it is a term of respect and affiliation, even endearment. But it does not denote a biological relationship. We have very precise words for mother's eldest brother, father's younger brother, things like that. So there are precise terms. But an uncle is sort of someone who you go to a party, we call them davats, and there's always a few uncles who will just spend 3 hours talking about politics. Sometimes they have no idea what they're talking about, but they deliver it with such enthusiasm and conviction that you can't help but either be swayed or convinced to leave the room and go somewhere else. So it's a little bit of that aw shucks, gosh approach. It's an everyman approach to the world. And sometimes when I listen to him, I think of someone who is very isolated from a lot of the world. And so comes across things that to me should be obvious, but to him feel groundbreaking. Like there are Palestinian Christians. Or maybe America's interventions in the Middle East have not been motivated by a desire to spread democracy or support international law. Who knew? But given that, I do have concerns about him. I'm not saying I like fully endorse him, but I guess what I'm trying to ask is, do you think it's possible that maybe he's struggling with the deconstruction of his worldview in real time while he also happens to have this massive platform? And so he can't help but think it out loud. And also we live in a culture, and maybe he'd resent me for saying this, but we live in a culture that loves for you to be quote unquote authentic and tell us about your feelings. And he's sort of just telling us about his feelings.
So what's your question?
So my question is, do you really think that right now, this iteration of Tucker Carlson is a continuation or a new edition of fundamentally the same Tucker Carlson, who's the guy who lobbed incendiary devices, rhetorically speaking, on Fox News? Do you think there could really be a difference here or not? And then I'll tell you why this matters to me as a Muslim.
I think he could be different. I have a really hard time believing that he is. It's possible that he could be different, that he's sort of grown and evolved, repented, seen the light, whatever. I think that's possible. I also think that it sure seems like it's helping his bottom line to continue to find points of polarization and disagreement. So I there's some continuity in the strategy, even if the affect has changed.
Let me tell you the personal angle, and then I'll tell you the big picture angle, and I'll tell you where I'm confused and I'm struggling, because I appreciate your insight on these questions and so many questions. So for me, I've never been possessed with a platform like Tucker Carlson, let's be entirely honest. But I spent a lot of time basically from the early 2000s through about the mid 2010s doing a lot of media hits. And I found myself uncomfortable with the format for a lot of different reasons. One is because I thought 60, 90-second hits are really reductive. And they are, as you rightly pointed out, they're bad for our country. So there's no denying that. But I still did them because I thought they were important to do. And if you were to track what I've said over the last 20 years, you would see big shifts in my point of view. That I have endorsed politicians and taken positions that years later I've come to regret, or at least feel like I've learned a lot from.
Yeah.
But I never withdrew entirely from the idea of being part of public conversations. Although I did change the format. I didn't like TV news. And I don't like the rapid fire social media thing. So I took myself off Twitter. I had, at some point, I think tens of thousands of followers. I got off. I thought it was toxic. I thought it was unhealthy. This to me feels more responsible because I'm thinking out loud, and you get to say, hey, maybe that's a dumb way of looking at it. And then I have to really think about it.
Sure.
But I do get the idea that if you're a public voice, I mean, would we prefer that he didn't change his mind? I don't know. I'm asking.
Yeah, I think the thing that lends him the most credibility is when he's confessional, is when he says, actually, I was wrong about Islam. Actually, I was wrong about supporting Trump in this last election. Actually, I was wrong about Israel. So he does this thing and it feels very authentic and sincere. And I don't know if it is or not. I honestly don't. But those kinds of things for me give him the most credibility. Because in this moment, politically and in the media, it's really, I mean, we have a lot of examples of people who refuse to admit any errors, any moment that they could possibly have been wrong. I think all of us are, of course, are evolving in our thinking. We should be, as long as we're people who are trying to better ourselves and that kind of stuff. Those are the moments that I relate most to Tucker, where I'm like, oh, okay, well, that takes it seems to take some courage. I also wonder if it's a very wise media strategy.
It's a wise media strategy. Well, I think, and here, let me say it this way. A lot of times it feels like the positions Tucker Carlson has shifted towards are very much in tune where the rest of the country has already gone. So I would not doubt that him breaking with Trump cost him followers and was a difficult thing to do because he was very much part of that MAGA world. But for him to come around to say Gaza is a genocide doesn't strike me as a particularly surprising conclusion to come to at the point when he did. Because at this point, if you are paying any attention at all and you don't believe it's a genocide, you're being willfully obtuse. There's no other way to put it, right?
I agree, but Haroon, you got to think about the context that he's speaking in.
So now you're defending him.
No, I'm not defending him at all. What I'm saying is that if you look at the American public in totality, I agree. But his base has been 50, 60, 70-year-old white people.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
And all those folks.
They're uncles.
They're uncles.
Yeah.
And I think the majority of those people, I think the polls have shown, continue to be very supportive of Israel, would not use words like genocide. I really have seen a marked shift in people's opinion from that sort of demographic, more so than I've ever seen in my life. And a lot of that is attributed to Tucker.
So let me tell you where my concern about Tucker Carlson's voice in American Muslim communities comes from. You are right that he has articulated a case for Muslim humanity like very few other public voices have done, never mind someone coming from the right.
Totally.
And to hear someone with his platform and his audience and his relationship to the president and powerful people on the right to say, this is a genocide. Muslims are human beings too. Muslims are not my enemy. Why are we supporting Israel? This Iran war is a bad idea. That is all deeply meaningful to someone who has seen for years and years and years their everyday real life concerns and commitments disparaged, dismissed, or diminished.
Of course.
I felt this myself when I say in quote unquote powerful places and mainstream conversations, elite institutions, when I say as an American Muslim of Pakistani ancestry who's ethnically Punjabi, and I say, I think the Iran war is bad for the United States, people would respond to me as if I was saying that only because I'm brown and Muslim and that
right.
I can't actually care about the United States. I can't actually care about the country I'm a part of and I live in and I care about. So I get that entirely. But what concerns me is twofold. One is there was a tendency among a lot of Muslims, especially before October 7th, to gravitate to the right because there was a perceived convergence on social issues and questions around gender, sexuality, so on and so forth. And because we're so excited to see someone saying certain things about Israel, Palestine, what have you, that we are minimizing other things he keeps saying that, in my mind, should freak us out a little bit.
Like what?
So he did this 2-hour interview with the New York Times, and I forgot the interviewer's name. She's quite good. And she did ask him hard questions. She also asked him what I think were silly questions, where he would make a very plain, matter-of-fact case for why the United States should not be obsessed with minor movements in the Middle East and that we have more pressing concerns here at home. And she just couldn't fathom that, right? That someone could say, Israel's not our priority. If Israel wants to start with a war with Lebanon, why are we supporting that? That really rattled her in a way that is sadly all too common among elite figures in these sort of dying mainstream spaces. But then he said things that were like, whoa, and she didn't push back on it. So at one point in the interview, he said, I believe racial differences are real. And she just let it slide. And I thought to myself, what in God's name does that mean? I mean, okay, South Asians tend to be more prone to heart disease. That is real, right? But I don't think that's what Tucker Carlson means. And then he announces maybe a few months later, a third party with, as one of its core planks, zero immigration. And so where I'm concerned is it's like just because someone agrees with you doesn't mean they agree with you for the same reasons.
Yeah.
Just because you see someone in the same place as you doesn't mean that you and he are going to the same destination. You might just be like ships passing in the night, or in this case, algorithms passing each other. And so there's this momentary convergence that feels really meaningful. And then you make political decisions based on it. Just like some Muslims voted for Trump because they thought he would stop the genocide in Gaza, and it hasn't stopped. And then on top of it, he started and lost the Iran war and then decided to start the exact same war again to see if maybe the second time would be different. This is like if the English coach had come into that bronze third place match versus France and played the exact same style of game that they played against Argentina. It's like you just did that and it ended badly. Why would you do the exact same thing? So what I mean to say is I think that sometimes people inflate the importance of an ideological convergence and then they refuse to acknowledge the divergences. And when those divergences are fundamentally contradictory to what you believe in, why are we not talking about that?
Yeah. The two questions I keep thinking about in relation to Tucker Carlson, and these are very kind of Avenue M inspired, are who are we becoming when we engage with and listen to Tucker Carlson? Like, how is it forming us?
That's a great question.
And then the second one is, what is the world that Tucker Carlson actually is creating or wants to create with his platform? And I think the world that Tucker wants to create is not a world, by and large, that I also want to contribute in making. And then I, for sure, this is personal from me, but when I listen, I try so hard not to get on social media. People send me clips of Tucker Carlson a lot. And
is this why you don't respond when I send you reels, Jerry? It's a sign of friendship among men.
Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly. Well, I respond as soon as we post an episode because then I get on to share it, and then all of a sudden I'm like, anyway. So, but what I recognize in myself is that when I listen to Tucker, even when he's talking, when he's saying things that I agree with, what I feel is outrage. I feel embittered. I feel closed off.
You feel embittered because you disagree with him, or when you find yourself agreeing with him?
Both those things. For me, the medium, the format, is one of polarization. And he's trying to inspire incredibly strong feelings. I don't know if he cares so much about whether or not you agree with him, as long as you have a significant, a dramatic reaction to him. I hate that in myself.
So do you think it's more a product of social media and the nature of social media? And just to push you on this, if you watch a Tucker Carlson YouTube video, which is maybe an hour long, do you feel the same way? Or is it more when he is packaged, and I'm not excusing that packaging, when he's packaged for or packages himself for social media attention spans, that reaction is engendered?
So I'm speaking like totally personally here. So I don't, So Tucker has a particular context for me, right? So talk about uncles and aunties. Like I've watched a fair amount of Tucker Carlson sitting with older white Christian folks in their living room because that's what they had on all the time. And so that's the context that I sort of got to know Tucker in. And he was incredibly difficult to listen to. It just felt, what's the word? Toxic, I think. Yeah, toxic is the word I would use.
Yeah.
So now, the minute I listen to Tucker in short form or long form, I get flashbacks to that. And I'm just like, ooh, I can't do this. And so I'll admit, I haven't engaged with a bunch of Tucker because I can't. It's so difficult for me to listen to him.
And to be clear, I don't either actively choose to listen to him. I do because he's so prominent in Muslim spaces.
Right.
And I want to know why that is, and I want to understand how to respond to that. Exactly what you said. I go to so many parties, social functions, events where people will bring him up in a very positive way.
Yeah.
And then I think to myself, only a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, whenever it was that Trump was elected, that people were sharing arguments and ideas about why we should vote for Trump with the same level of conviction and enthusiasm. And I wonder if that's a product exclusive of the algorithm, or it's something deeper that we're not talking enough about how to think about what is real convergence and incidental convergence, or even where it's a muddled kind of convergence. And I think that's what this is for me. It's muddled.
Yeah.
Because some of it is true, but then along with it, exactly to that point you made, there are other assumptions and expectations and ambitions that make me really uneasy. So Yes, he wants the United States not to have started this war with Iran that has been restarted. I agree. That's wrong. But he also wants to close the United States off from the world and seems to idealize and imagine an America before America was part of the world and the world is part of America. I don't know that Tucker Carlson watches the World Cup, for example. And that's not to say that if you don't watch the World Cup, you are a bad person. But that's not what I mean. What I mean is, what is your approach to the wider world?
Yeah.
Is it one of joy? Is it one of embrace? Is it one of concern? Even as elemental as we can't survive without the rest of the world. Like, what are we
Yeah.
even talking about right now? Like, what world does Tucker Carlson live in where you can have zero immigration?
It does feel to me like it's important to say that a lot of this is driven by algorithms and social media. I think this is a huge part of it, and not to become old people ourselves and just sort of to decry all technology or whatever. But I think that's
Say two bald men on a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that is a huge part of it. That's the incentives within the system, is to produce outrage and that kind of stuff. Tucker has figured that out. So I think that's a huge thing. I think the question of how do we navigate convergence, ideological convergence, is a question that is much more important if it's you and I who are speaking to each other in our own community.
Yeah.
Whether or not I agree with Tucker Carlson, who I'm never going to meet, is a different thing altogether, I think.
It would be weird if he was listening to this right now and then emailed and said he wanted to meet. Would you do that episode?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. You know, it's so funny. So one of the people who I really admire is this pastor from the West Bank. His name is Munther Isaac, and he was on Tucker. And he's a moral force. I mean, he is a person that I want to live my life like, you know.
Yeah.
And basically his rationale for going on was I couldn't give up the opportunity to affect his audience. I had to take the opportunity. So I think the answer would be different for me than it would be for you, maybe. But I think
so. Your answer is no.
I don't think I could.
So if I said, "Hey, Joey Tucker wants to be on Avenue M," you would say no.
Shoot. We'd have to have a long conversation about it, Haroon.
Like perhaps an episode of the podcast.
Yeah, would you exactly? Would you say yes to that?
I don't know, but I think it would be interesting to unpack his ideas. I would want to ask him questions like, what do you mean when you say racial differences are real? I
would for sure want to have a conversation with him. I think the question of these incentives and the ways in which you're building his platform and all of that stuff, that's where, for me, the morality gets really complicated. And so if he wanted to come and have a meal, I'd love to do that. Let's have a conversation.
Sure.
I think putting him on our platform or vice versa to be a level of sanctioning of whatever that, I don't know.
So I want to tell you why this was really meaningful to me. So we were talking about someone else in the high school class I teach.
Uh-huh.
And this is what led to the Tucker Carlson conversation. And I wrote a post about it on my Substack. So, you know, it's been online for a while, is this idea of real and false convergences, right? Or even temporary and substantive convergences. So yes, Tucker Carlson is saying things that we want and need to hear in the wider conversation. He's also saying things that we do not want to hear and definitely do not need to hear in wider conversations. And so it's confusing because politics, of course, especially democratic politics, requires us to at least engage with people we strongly disagree with and have to build coalitions around issues that are not necessarily coalitions that we're that comfortable with, right? And so where I was getting concerned was the fact that the sharing of the content was so reflexively enthusiastic.
Yeah.
And in fact, and not to turn this darker, and this is a totally different register of problematic, but there's a similarity in the approach was when after Andrew Tate converted and so many Muslims were sharing his content. And I said, look, man, if he's genuinely converted, the first thing he should do is apologize for what he's done. The second thing he should do is to be taken to account for what he's done and be willing to do that. That would be a mark of a genuine conversion. And the third thing he should do is probably not talk for a long time. Right? Like those are all three things are required. Like this is not even ideological difference, right? Like here's a guy who's the accusations against him, the things he's been now arrested for, right? Like there was a
Yes.
very long, exhaustive New Yorker piece. But what I'm not referring to the Tate brothers and Tucker Carlson as the same person. Absolutely not. What I'm saying is in terms of how people responded, oh, here's someone saying something I like. Let me then share that. What are you doing? But then the reverse came up to me and I thought it was a really beautiful argument, a religious argument for pluralism. which is that sometimes, and I think this speaks to our podcast and our friendship, people start with the same values and arrive at different conclusions.
Right.
But because the underlying values are resonant and similar, the conclusions can coexist in harmony.
Agreed.
You are a Christian, I am a Muslim. I have friends who are more conservative, I have friends who are very progressive. But because the underlying values and commitments are so similar, and the moral frameworks are at the very least compatible, we can learn and grow with each other.
Yeah.
And I think that to me answers your question, and I'm thinking out loud here, of what kind of person am I when I listen to so-and-so.
Yeah.
To me, that's a big thing in the Muslim tradition. I'm sure there's an analogous approach in Christian traditions, that you determine your friends based on the effect they have on you. Not whether, and it's fascinating, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that there are friends who nourish you, and then there are people who drain you.
Mm-hmm.
But nourishment does not have to mean agreement.
No.
Which is beautiful.
Yeah, but I think nourishment does mean that I'm becoming more of who I am when I'm in a relationship
Yes.
with you.
Yes.
Yeah. And I often feel like, and this just could be shaded by my own experience with somebody like Tucker, but I often feel more suspicious of the world after I listen to him. I feel less likely to engage with my neighbors. I feel more tempted to stay in these algorithmic shackles, just like stay in that. I think all of those things, some of them are directly correlated with who Tucker is and how he's representing things. And some of them are just the platform in general. But I'm just pretty convinced that listening to Tucker Carlson is not good for me.
It's so interesting you say that. I remember a long time ago, I took a class on what's called fiqh in Islam, like basic rules of behavior, things like that. And our teacher said something really interesting. He said, if something is required for you to do an obligatory act, it becomes obligatory. So simple example, if you need an alarm clock to wake up for Fajr, the prayer that's very early in the morning, then not setting your alarm clock is a sin.
Makes sense.
Because you know that thing, unless the thing itself obviously is problematic. But if it's a means to an end, and I think that's a really interesting way to think about technology.
Mm-hmm.
Is that if this makes me feel bad, then why am I doing it? If this takes me away from who I am,
that's better. I
why
like
am I
that
doing
more.
it?
Yeah, I like that more because the feels bad. I mean, like there's a lot of things I think that make us feel bad, but we need to hear and will help us become more of who we are. Right.
Yes.
So yeah, I like
that's
that.
a good correction. That's a good corrective. So in conclusion, this is a great place to point out that our next episode will be about conspiracy theories. Possibly and potentially.
Which is not disconnected from Tucker Carlson.
But it's not necessarily connected, although it probably is.
All right, man. It's great to talk to you.
It's fun, man.
Thanks for listening, and thanks to Zach Swellbar for recording our theme music. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let us know what questions we should be asking and who else we should be talking to.